Today is February 19th. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic. It is a thrill, honor, and joy to be here with you today as we journey through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Today we're going to be reading Chapter 11, A Vision for You, pages 158 through 160. And we're also going to be reading Step 7 of the 12 and 12, the second half of page 71 today. So with all that, my friends, let's get right to the good stuff. Now, if you'll recall from yesterday, we got to a point where we met AA member number 3 in A Vision for You. And that would be Bill Dotson, AA member number 3, according to the Big Book. And now we're about to talk about a fourth. So we're going to start on the bottom of page 158, and we'll get to it. So you see, there were 3 alcoholics in that town who now felt that they had to give to others what they had found or be sunk. After several failures to find others, a fourth turned up. He came through an acquaintance who had heard the good news. He proved to be a devil-may-care young fellow whose parents could not make out whether he wanted to stop drinking or not. They were deeply religious people, much shocked by their son's refusal to have anything to do with the church. He suffered horribly from his sprees, but it seemed as if nothing could be done for him. He consented, however, to go to the hospital, where he occupied the very room recently vacated by the lawyer. He had 3 visitors. After a bit, he said, "The way you fellows put this spiritual stuff makes sense. I'm ready to do business. I guess the old folks were right after all." So one more was added to the fellowship. All this time, our friend of the hotel lobby incident remained in that town. He was there 3 months. He now returned home, leaving behind his first acquaintance, the lawyer, and the devil-may-care chap. These men had found something brand new in life. Though they knew they must help other alcoholics if they would remain sober, that motive became secondary. It was transcended by the happiness they found in giving themselves for others. They shared their homes, their slender resources, and gladly devoted their spare hours to fellow sufferers. They were willing, by day or night, to place a new man in the hospital and visit him afterward. They grew in numbers. They experienced a few distressing failures, but in those cases they made an effort to bring the man's family into a spiritual way of living, thus relieving much worry and suffering. A year and 6 months later, these 3 had succeeded with 7 more. Seeing much of each other, scarce an evening passed that someone's home did not shelter a little gathering of men and women, happy in their release and constantly thinking about how they might present their discovery to some newcomer. In addition to these casual get-togethers, it became customary to set apart one night a week for a meeting to be attended by anyone or everyone interested in a spiritual way of life. Aside from the fellowship and sociability, the prime object was to provide a time and a place where new people might bring their problems. Outsiders became interested. One man and his wife placed their large home at the disposal of this strangely assorted crowd. This couple has since become so fascinated that they have dedicated their home to the work. Many a distracted wife has visited this house to find loving and understanding companionship among other women who knew her problem, to hear from the lips of their husbands what had happened to them, to be advised how her own wayward mate might be hospitalized and approached when next he stumbled. Many a man, yet days from this hospital experience, has stepped over the threshold of that home into freedom. Many an alcoholic who entered there came away with an answer. He succumbed to the gay crowd inside, who laughed at their own misfortunes and understood his. Impressed by those who visited him at the hospital, he capitulated entirely when, later, in an upper room of this house, he heard the story of some man whose experience closely tallied with his own. The expression of the faces of the women, that indefinable something in the eyes of the men, the stimulating and electric atmosphere of the place, conspired to let him know that there was a haven at last. All right, my friends, that is a great way to stop in the Big Book today. I definitely want to come back to that in just a second. So we left off on page 71, the first half, and just a quick recap on the paragraph just before. It said, "We are sure that no class of people in the world have ever made worse of a mess than trying to live by this formula than alcoholics. For thousands of years, we've been demanding more than our share of security, prestige, and romance. And when we seemed to be succeeding, we drank to dream still greater dreams. When we were frustrated, even in part, we drank for oblivion." And this line right here is powerful. "Never was there enough of what we thought we wanted." And, yeah, I can relate to that one. Never was there enough of what I thought I wanted. Go figure. So we'll finish off this page right here. Bottom of 71. "In all these strivings, so many of them well-intentioned, our crippling handicap had to be our lack of humility. We had lacked the perspective to see that character building and spiritual values had to come first, and that the material satisfactions were not the purpose of living. Quite characteristically, we had gone all out in confusing the ends with the means. Instead of regarding the satisfaction of our material desires as the means by which we could live and function as human beings, we had taken these satisfactions to be the final end and aim of life." Stuff, right? It just says in the paragraph before, security, prestige, romance. We had taken these satisfactions to be the final end and the aim of life. I heard this quote from Fred Rogers one time that it's not about winning for ourselves. It's by changing our pace now and then and helping others win too. To bring that back to the 12 steps, it really does feel good helping others win too. And that really ties back into what the Big Book was saying on page 159. It says here, about halfway through the page, "These men had found something brand new in life, though they knew they must help other alcoholics if they would remain sober." So that's part one. That's a nice benefit from working with other alcoholics. It certainly has been for my life. It helps me to remain sober. But I love the follow-up, so that's one thing. But that motive became secondary. That's what it says. It was transcended by the happiness they found in giving themselves for others. So for me, I can relate to that as well. Say if I'm in my head, like this happens to me a lot, so I'll just share my experience, strength, and hope. When I wake up and I've done my morning routine of prayers and the things that I try to do that are good for my soul, and this is just for me, everyone's got their own routine. Sometimes, even when I do all that stuff, I still feel awful. And that negative talk starts to chatter in the back of my mind. I'm not good enough. They don't like me. I don't like me. That kind of stuff. When I get in that state of mind, or if I have a resentment or anything like that, I try to get on my knees and I pray to my higher power. I try to give that to my higher power. And I ask, who can I help? And sometimes I don't have a direct answer. I just kind of flip through my phone of friends that are in certain fellowships or a family member, somebody out there that I can reach out to and say, how are you doing? Is there anything I can help you pray about today? You all right? I miss you. Do you need any help with anything? And sometimes, in turn, by the time I have that conversation with that long-lost friend or that family member I haven't talked to in quite a while, or just a random stranger, by the end of the conversation, usually, I feel a whole lot better because I got out of myself. Because I don't know about anybody else who's listening. My brain can be a scary place to be if I'm there too long. So, I can definitely relate to this line right here. It was transcended by the happiness they found in giving themselves for others. So getting outside of myself helps me to stay sober, but it also makes me happy to help somebody else. I remember one time, a real quick story. One time early in my recovery, I was dangerously close to a relapse. I was feeling really, really down about myself, and I call a friend of one of the fellowships, and I was ready. I had prepared everything I was going to tell him, what I'm going through and everything. Sure enough, he FaceTimes me, and he's got his dog with him. Actually, a couple of his dogs. He just starts talking about his dogs for about 10, 15 minutes. And I at first, I'm like, okay, I love dogs too, but I really got to get this off my chest. Well, he just keeps talking. Finally, he starts making me laugh. And finally, we start talking about random stuff. And eventually, I'm sure we talked about dogs. But the point I'm trying to make is, by the time I hung up that phone, I no longer had that desire to drink. Because I got outside of myself. I picked up that phone and I called somebody. And I felt so much better, and I thanked my higher power, like, wow, God used dogs. My higher power used dogs to get me out of myself. So I hope that makes sense to somebody out there, but I can certainly relate to both readings today, that it really is fulfilling to help others win too. And with all that, my friends, that's all we have for today. I hope you have a great day, and I am looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow.